Good afternoon. I'm Douglas Wolf, Pinal County Assessor. We're here with the In Maricopa staff in beautiful Maricopa, and I'm here to answer your questions about the race for assessor in Pinal County.
Well, to start with, can you give us a little bit of your background? Why are you the assessor?
Sure. Well, I started out in California, in San Diego, 35 years ago, and was in the real estate business, and split my time in the profession of real estate and computer software consulting. And those two combined really nicely because as 35 years ago, there was just DOS and things were evolving in the computer industry and nicely. So I ran those two parallel careers. I was self-employed for that entire time. And at the end of it, actually, I was part of a company that sold software to commercial real estate brokers all over the world, actually. So not only did I work in the industry itself, doing transactions, I've probably done several hundred real estate transactions. I also sold software for people who do the transactions. So I have a long background there. And when I moved to Arizona to escape California, like a lot of people, I was still running my business at a certain level. And then I decided to maybe make a career change and start talking to people at the Chamber of Commerce. And they said, you know, our current assessor is going to retire. And you have a perfect background for what the assessor's office is, since it's really not partisan in the sense of the house is a house. The way you evaluate it has nothing to do with your politics per se. And so you should run. And so I did, and I won in 2012 and took office, and then won again in 2016.
Okay. Do you still dabble in the other real estate or anything like that?
No, you know, it turns out you can constitutionally, but being the assessor in Pinal County is a full-time job. We have 260,000 parcels, almost 500,000 people. My office has 54 staff, and our budget is about $4 million. So it's a full-time job. So I don't have any time for anything else.
Sounds like it. Well, this is a Republican primary, and you and Mike Cruz have both laid claim to being, fiscal conservatives. So what are the differences politically? What are the differences between the two?
Well, I think the main difference is anybody can put their name on a sign and say they're conservative. I've been a conservative since I was a young man. My first vote was for Ronald Reagan in 1980 for president. And I've never been registered as a Democrat. My opponent has. I've never voted for a Democrat. My opponent has. I was a Trump delegate in 2016, and I'd never supported anything that I would consider to be more towards the left, like the Red for Education walk out of the schools. I would never do that, and I think that's an important distinction between the two of us. Plus, my background is real estate. From a resume standpoint, I'm better suited to do the job. Plus, I've been doing it for 7.5 years.
Now, you on the last debate with the Pinal County Republican Club, you rode Mike pretty hard on being red for ed. What were you inferring on that? What did that mean?
Well, first of all, it was an illegal strike by the teachers. Whether or not you wanted someone to get a raise is a different argument. The teachers deserved a raise; they got it. But the way you go about it is not to break your contract, walk out on the students and abandon them in their classroom. And there they are. The parents are like, what are we going to do? We have to get daycare. And he encouraged them to do that. In fact, he's proud of his Red for Ed support. He's purged everything from his website, his pictures and so forth, but I have them because I got them before they did that. The question you have to come to is if the employees of Pinal County want a raise, is he going to encourage them to strike on the people of Pinal County and walk off their jobs like he did with the teachers? So he's a PR guy at Casa Grande Schools, and I think what they did was wrong. And you just won't ever see me doing anything like that.
And you bring up right and left politics. Why is your position elected? Why would that be partisan?
Yeah, well, because the assessor is to advocate for the taxpayers as a civilian. The staff is a professional staff, and they have one mindset, and you're as elected, you're responsible to the voters. So if there's problems, they can come to you and say, hey, straighten this out or whatever it might be. And that's why it's elected, because you're more responsive. Also, it separates you from the board of supervisors and other elected officials so that if they have friends or they're trying to influence something, well, they can't because you're not an employee, but you're working for the people of Pinal County solely. And that's what I do every day is advocate for the taxpayer.
Now, at that same debate, your opponent accused you of squandering taxpayer money and multiple lawsuits over classifications. What is your response to that?
Well, there's always lawsuits in the assessor's office. I can tell you there's a couple of law firms that's what they make their living on, is suing Pinal County and Maricopa County and Yuma County, and that's all they do. And the way it works is we take a position on a classification and we try to work it out with the landowner, reach some sort of agreement as valuation and so forth. And if we can't, then we take our case to the county attorney. In this case, it was actually started with Land O'Boyles. It goes back that far, and now with Kent. And if Kent's office says, yes, your position is the one we agree with, then it has to go to the Board of Supervisors, because I have no staff attorney. I have no budget for, the assessor has no budget for lawsuits. So after Kent says, okay, it goes to the Board of Supervisors, and they have to vote in order to continue or to start any lawsuits with anyone. So it was a 4-1 vote, and we went forward in the first round of this particular litigation. The judge agreed with us. The landowner decided to appeal it, and the appeals court said, well, even though all these things haven't been met as far as the classification is concerned, we're going to create a new standard, which is just if you say we intend to make a profit on grazing on our land, good enough. And that's what the ruling came down as. So kind of surprising, but that's the rule, and we live by it. And that's what happened. So as far as wasting, it wasn't a huge amount of money, and I wouldn't have gotten there without the boards. They would not have voted for it if it was. And there's sometimes where no matter what you do, try to compromise and reach an agreement, you can't do it, and that's why litigation is necessary. So now we have a clear line what the court expects for those types of cases, and we'll follow it.
But there are multiple. How many lawsuits were there last year?
Oh, well, there's lots of small ones. There's two levels.
Yeah.
There's under $2 million or state tax court cases, and then there's tax court. And the exact number I probably can't give you. The small ones probably a couple dozen. The large ones maybe a handful, 3 or 4. But right now, there's all the counties are being sued for classification and valuation purposes right now. They think we're consistent. The Department of Revenue is named in the lawsuit in the state. I mean, it is part and parcel, and no pun intended on the parcel part, that if you're an assessor, you will be sued. And it's not actually suing the assessor, they're suing the Board of Supervisors, is the way it works under the law.
And what is that process, the relationship between your office and the county attorney's office? How do you present your information saying, hey, this is what we think it should be?
Mm-hmm. There's a liaison from the county attorney's office, the guy who specializes in what the assessor does. He has some more things in his portfolio. It is he in this case. And when we have a dispute, we take it to him and we go through the fact pattern. And then he makes a recommendation to the county attorney, which in this case is Kent. And if he agrees, then we go to the Board of Supervisors. And again, the board has the final say because we have no budget for it. They have to decide where the money's spent.
Now, when courts do rule against your decisions, what do you do with that feedback?
Well, in this case, it established a standard of what to use for evaluating the status of classification. So we just follow we follow what the court says. So it becomes the new standard basically, versus what we had in the law before.
And is that an indication that you were not following the law in the first place?
Actually, it's the opposite. We would not have gone forward if the law didn't specify these certain things in order to qualify. And like I said, the first judge agreed with us, and the appeals court changed all the rules. Sometimes activist courts, in a way, they said, well, this is what we think the legislature intended, so fine. So that's what happened. And it's civil, so it's a civil lawsuit. It has nothing to do with illegality or anything like that.
Well, what is your philosophy of evaluation? Is it the same for everyone, or is it a case by case depending on what's going on with them?
Well, you have to follow the statute, Constitution and the law, and precedent, plus DOR, Department of Revenue, because we're actually an arm of the Department of Revenue. So there's no real philosophy except follow the law as written. Mm-hmm. So homeowners is pretty straightforward. We have a limited property value and a full cash value. Businesses, there's 3 different ways to value a business. Whether or not something is agriculture, it's pretty obvious with row crops. If they have cotton, they have cotton. There are some areas that are harder to value, which is businesses, because the different methods, there's the income method, the cost method, and so on, or the market method. So I don't have a personal philosophy except that I'm going to follow the law and not treat anybody any different. They're all the same as far as I'm concerned. Everybody's equal under the law, and they're going to be treated fairly and straightforwardly.
You said you had quite a big staff there. How often do you frequently sit face to face with a taxpayer and talk about?
Almost every day, either on the phone or they come to see me in Florence, which is fine. If you have an appeals process, sometimes I'll sit in on the hearings, but my staff actually does the actual appeal itself. So probably every day I talk to a taxpayer one way or another.
Okay.
And I'm glad to do it. My personal cell phone, by the way, is on the website.
Okay.
So people have my phone on your nights and weekends. I get calls, which is fine. I figure I'm a public figure. I'll take the calls. And so that's why I put it out there. It's not a county phone. It's my personal cell phone number.
I've heard some people say that this process is a little slower than they like. Is there any, when they need to get information or something? How do you go about prioritizing cases?
As far as when people have a dispute?
Yes.
Well, a lot of it is there is a 90-day window for your appeals process. I'm sorry, 60-day window after we send out the valuation. So you send in a form. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the time limits, except if it goes to court, is all prescribed by law. We have to answer within a certain amount of time. The person can respond to us and back and forth. But like I said, when I started, we had thousands of appeals. Now we're less than 200 or even less than that because we started putting comparables on our website. And so people said, oh, amazing. I can tell how my house is being valued versus everything else in my neighborhood. And that dropped them dramatically as far as the number of people for houses that were being appealed. So that's been good. And, vacant land is always one of those things that's hard, to value. And appraisals are just opinions of the value at the time. Mm-hmm. So there's always disputes about it, and it's not going to stop.
And Paul Leonard is asking, I'm a Navy Seabee veteran. What do you do for vets? And do you support the disabled veteran exemption?
I do. That's a great question. Thank you. Here's the situation. In Arizona, if you're 100% disabled from any cause, you have a property tax exemption that you have to apply for it, bring in your paperwork and a doctor's note, and that sort of thing. And it's good for 3 years. And one of the first changes I made as a sidebar here is we used to have people come in every 3 years physically to our office. And I asked the staff, if they're 100% permanently disabled, why are we having them come back every 3 years? And, well, they said, that's just the way we've always done it. And I said, well, I think we should change that. So now if after 3 years you're still permanently disabled, which, it's more likely than not you're going to be, you just send in a form to us and say, I'm still disabled. I was overwhelmed by the number of calls and notes, emails I got from veterans who are 100% disabled, who said, now I don't have to go to the VA every 3 years and try to get an appointment to confirm that I'm still 100% disabled. So going on from that idea is Arizona does give an exemption for 100%, but it does not give an exemption, and it used to, for less than 100% disabled. So let's say you're 50%. There was a chart that said how much your property taxes were, and this is service related. It's from being in the military, and you would get an exemption. There was a court decision quite a while ago that said, no, this doesn't apply the way it's written, so we're getting rid of it. The assessors, and I was president of the Assessors Association last year, and we ran the bill, and we got it through, well, I guess we're still in the same year. We got it through the House, or through the Senate and the House, and it was ready to go to the final vote and then to the governor, and the virus hit. So not only did that bill help out partially disabled veterans, it also raised the exemption limit for widows and widowers in Arizona. There is an exemption for them. And of course, there's the senior freeze, which is still ongoing. People can apply for that up until September 1st. But the point is, we were right there on the cusp, and a lot of good legislation was stopped, not only our bill, because of the virus. And we're hoping if a special session, they might do it, but we may run out of time. So I hope to be reelected, and if I am, I will, again, spend my time at the legislature testifying. I think it'll pass. There's nobody really against it. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of getting everything lined up so that it gets passed. So thanks for the question.
Now we had another one that was confused about what you do. Your office mainly has its governmental relationship with the Board of Supervisors. What kind of relationship do you have with local city governments?
Well, we do a lot of stuff for local city governments with annexations. We have to process those if, like the city of Maricopa has grown dramatically and they want to annex parcels that are on their border. That processes through my office. We also have, not control of, but we set up the valuations for all the special districts, the special taxing authorities, school districts, water districts, fire districts. We work with all of them on their boundaries and making sure that they have the right parcels in their particular taxing authority. And when we are working with them, that goes to the Board of Supervisors. They sign off on it, and then the tax bill itself for each of those special districts is done by the treasurer. We don't do the billing, we just do the valuation classification. We also do drawing the lines for combinations and splits. So if you want to combine a lot in the city of Maricopa, well, you have your own. In the city, you have your own system that does it. But if it's outside, if it's in the county, we are the ones who put parcels together or split them apart. Like if there's a new housing development or something like that, our office is the one that actually processes that. And even with the virus, we have hundreds, probably thousands of parcels right now that are waiting to be processed because businesses is very good here with, Lucid, Nicola, Nocera coming in. I mean, the business community is vibrant, and with the stuff going on in Maricopa, so things have not slowed down despite the virus, as far as we're concerned.
When a big company comes in like that, what are their first questions for your office?
Well, they want to know how we do our land valuations and how we do our business personal property in Arizona. And usually Tim Knavel gives me a call. He's our county economic developer. And he'll say, well, this is what they're planning to build, and this is because they don't know for sure necessarily because it's 3 to 5 year plans, what they're going to build exactly. But we can kind of give them a ballpark based on what their buildings are going to be and what equipment they're going to be using as to what their taxable basis will be. Obviously, until it's built and we actually go visit the site, we can't give them a hard number, but we get pretty close because of experience. I have my chief appraiser has been with the county, I think, 30 years now. Hector Madrid is a fantastic employee, and he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about valuation. And we work really closely because the county board, when we all got elected in 2012, said, "Look, we think our homeowners' property taxes are too high. How do we change that?" And it was because we were so homeowner based. That's what we had a lot of as housing developments. And here it has come to fruition where we have all these new businesses, billion-dollar businesses coming in to the Casa Grande area and Eloy and that area. That's going to make a huge difference down the road. It'll lower everybody's tax bill because they're going to be generating so much from those new businesses. Plus the Superior Mine, when that comes online, another aspect that will generate quite a bit of property tax for Pinal County. So our county is positioned for terrific positive growth. And it's exciting to be part of it, to see this happen, to see something growing and new things sprouting up everywhere. As you can see, as you drive along the roads, you can see the traffic obviously is a problem. But, you look at the overpass got put in because of the leadership here of Anthony Smith, who was our county supervisor. And that's the role. The supervisor is, advocate for those sorts of things in the area. And we're going to lose him because he's going to retire, which is, he's a great asset and has been the mayor and so forth. And I think the next, obviously, thing that has to be done infrastructure-wise is the exit north out of Maricopa because it's a dangerous road. And that'll be difficult to do because you're going through some Native American lands. And so you have to have some great leadership. So we'll see who the new supervisor is. But whatever they decide, we will help them as far as the planning and, what with the BLM and state trust land and all those things. That comes through my office. It's a long answer, but it's pretty involved, yeah.
Well, speaking of which, what is your involvement with the Native American communities?
Well, they're a sovereign nation, so they have their own authority there. We don't.
Are there any conflicts?
No, that is all set by the federal government, their boundaries and so on. So we have nothing to do with that.
We had talked on the phone before when we had a story about valuations and how they show up eventually.
Yes.
Are there any numbers that you see ahead of time that you like to share with the Board of Supervisors and kind of give them a heads up about what's happening?
Yes, there's two of them. One is the number of permits that are coming through our office for occupancy. That's one. That we know people are moving into new properties. Two, transfers of property. How many actually houses transacted? Is there still activity? And April was about a normal month. We haven't dropped off at all. I was surprised, to tell the truth. May it dropped just a slight bit as far as the trend line is concerned. So it's the final permits, the transfers that are in process, and then where our backlog is new developments, new 100 homes, 200 homes that we have to process. We actually create the parcels for each one of those individual houses, and until that's done, they don't get their final map and they can't start building and everything. They can do the improvements, but they can't do some other stuff. So those are the three things: is the backlog on developments, transfers, and what was the other one I just said? But anyway, there's three.
And let's talk about the website a bit for your office.
Sure.
Is it where you want it to be? Are there any improvements you want to
It's
make?
always good. Websites can always be better. And so the first thing, like I said, the first project was the comparable sales. And now they're on there, and that has made a huge impact on our interaction with the public because they can go look themselves and see why their valuation is where it is. We'd like to add other buildings. We'd like to add land to it. Right now we don't have land on, but that's a big project. We did the videos because people always ask, well, how do I appeal? Or I'm a senior, how do I apply for the exemption? So I did a couple of videos, put those up there. They've been good. What I'd like to have, and I don't have an IT department that's run by the IT people. I don't have my own person, is live chat. So that, people could go on our website, and if they have a question about, well, it's, it looks like my square foot on your site says it's 1,400 square foot. I think it's 15, or I think it's whatever it is. So we could have a dedicated person just answering the chat through our customer service department, which we'd like to have. As far as physically, we're going to open a new building here in Maricopa. The board has voted for it. And right now we are waiting to see if they'll let us staff it with somebody from the assessor's office, because we have a hiring freeze right now because everybody's worried about the budget, where the impact will be. And I think it'll be okay, but I don't make that decision. The board does. So we're hoping to have somebody physically here, which will help, as far as the website's great, but people do like to come in and talk to somebody. And Santan also, they're opening a new facility, and we hope to have that staffed also, but right now we don't.
And your opponent has said that you're not physically accessible to most people in the public. What do you answer to that?
I'm kind of surprised because as I'm out and about most of the time, I'm a member of 3 or 4 chambers. I go to the chamber meetings when I can, and I go to some veterans meetings, and like I said, I talk to people on the phone all the time because my personal cell phone number is out there. So I'm pretty accessible, and we also get comments online that talk about our accessibility, and it's been positive. And if there was something I should change, I will. But my cell phone is 480-779-9653. Anyone wants to call me and talk about real estate in Pinal County, they're welcome to do it. So I'm out and about quite a bit. Last night I was at a meeting in Apache Junction till about 9:30, and so I'm out there.
Does Pinal County receive any federal PILT, payment in lieu of taxes? And if yes, how is it used or distributed back to cities and towns?
Sure, we do. That's every year up until the first budget that Donald Trump did and the Congress, we had to petition every year for PILT. And PILT is, for people, it's kind of complicated. Basically, it's federal lands that are being used, but there's no tax dollars going to Pinal County to support like the roads and the services there. Now the assessor doesn't do anything except identify the parcels. And then the Board of Supervisors, through our congressman in Washington, is one that they run a bill for those funds. So my hands are not involved in the process except the identification. And then it comes back to the county into the general fund, not into my budget. But it's complicated, and I believe the last time they authorized it, they made it perpetual. So we don't have to go back every year and renew it. I think that was in the final language of the bill. But that would be a better question for Mr. Smith.
Exactly. Okay, I think they're going to stop talking. Our last question.
Sure.
How does your political affiliation inform your decision-making process?
Well, as far as the actual running the assessor's office, it doesn't. The law is very clear. There's not a liberal or left or right way to value properties. But from my personal standpoint, I think limited government, I'm there to advocate for the taxpayer. So if the staff gets a little maybe aggressive, I can say, well, wait a second. That's not exactly the way I see it. So I'm there to represent the taxpayers and be their voice within the county structure. And so it helps that I'm a Republican and I'm a conservative and I'm well known among all the supervisors. I have good relationships with the supervisors. They know that anytime they have a question, they can pick up the phone, call me, email me. We'll get together and talk about it. And also the county manager, and I have a great relationship. So, the county is going in the right direction. And it's like I said, it's fun and exciting to be working with good leadership. And we have that.
As soon as I say that, another question. Why do I have to wait till October for my exemption to go into effect when I've lived here since July 2019?
Well, the legislature decides when the process is complete, when it comes into force. So, for instance, in order to get an exemption for the senior freeze, you have to be in your house for 2 years as a minimum. And it has to be your primary residence. Sometimes, and that may be the generation of this question, is this was the second home and they may have moved here. And there's that time window that has to be completed before the exemption actually comes into force. So I'd have to look at the particular case to answer it directly. But there's always a lag process because the way we put in the exemptions, it has to be voted on by the Board of Supervisors. They have to approve it. And then it goes to the treasurer's office and they do it in the billing process.
Okay. I think those were all. I really appreciate you coming in today and answering these questions. I think people learned a lot about what the assessor's office does and the election.
All right. Well, I want to thank in Maricopa for having me in today. I really enjoyed getting over and meeting. We've met before. And I want to just say I appreciate everyone voting for me in the August primary. The early ballots come out in a couple of weeks. So thank you all for listening and joining us. And God bless America and God bless Pinal County.